Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm happy to welcome everybody available in this room and those who are watching us online. We have the presentation of very important draft laws for fisheries of Ukraine because they bring our fishing and fishery industry to a new level. We are following Europe, and now the fishing industry is following the same way. I want to introduce to you our speakers. Those are Yarema, Kovaliv, head of the State Agency for Fisheries of Ukraine, and also two experts from the European Union, Konstantyn Demianenko, and also Yehor Luchynkin, a special, tremendous team of experts working under the Ministry of Agrarian Policy of Ukraine as called the implementation of the agricultural and food policy in Ukraine. These experts helped us to analyze the legislative initiative of the EU and to develop initiatives borrowing the best European experience. We will work with you 15 or 20 minutes. Yarema Kovaliv will present to us our draft law legislative initiatives. Then we will have questions and answers session. Everyone who is watching us online, please reach me on Facebook. The floor is given to Mr. Kovaliv. Good morning. I'll start with today we want to tell you about three important draft laws that have to change the situation in the fishery industry. Those are systemic reforms we implement together with the support of the European Union. Thank you, and seizing this opportunity, I'd like to thank those who support us for this opportunity, for supporting us and implementing together with us those ideas that are being spoken much. The first draft law is to support a fund of the fishing industry support. The second is the certificate of fish origin. This is a document that has to follow up the whole process of fishery. And the third is about subsidies to agriculture entrepreneurs. Those are three very important documents that will have to end up with more fish in our Ukrainian rivers and ponds and seas, and more citizens will consume fish, and more entrepreneurs will catch fish and to raise their social and economic situation. I will start with the fund of support of agricultural support. Our branch during decades hasn't been receiving a sufficient amount of money, especially many critical trends lack funding. What we need to get enough fish in our waters, we need to preserve what we have. We need our fishery bodies to work normally, to have decent salary, to have good transportation means, to have boats. They need to have enough funds to fill in their floating means their boats. What else is important? Our fishery resources that are being exhausted, especially with illegal fishing, they need to be replenished. The whole world uses the system of putting biological fishing resources into our waters. That fish babies are settled into the waters of the general strategic meaning. How much fish we need to put into our ponds. To understand this, we need science to function. Science, then putting fish into the waters, and the preservation. They need financing. For example, science hasn't been receiving it has been receiving 870,000 hryvnias if it needs 10 million hryvnias. This year, the budget provides for 40 million hryvnias, but this is just a drop in the sea. And during the previous 4 years, our important program didn't get enough funding. As to the preservation of biological resources, several years ago, we started the reformation of the fish preservation, and we launched a fishing patrol, and this team needed boats and salaries. We managed to solve a part of these problems with our internal resources available in the current financing, but to provide the minimum need for new equipment, we need about 140 million. This year, we received only 100 million. It's an evidence of the shortage of funds to fulfill all necessary functions. And on the other hand, these funds are available within the fishery industry. For example, only less than for half a year, fish protection bodies suffered losses for 45 million hryvnias for this year, and about more than 30 million hryvnias was an amount for the previous year. The fish patrol and the fishery protection bodies work more effectively, and if we work more efficiently, then we can get money from the state budget. The state budget can get more money as well. And this time, if money goes to the state budgets and are paid by our violators, they are dispersed among other purposes. In logic, these 45 millions should be directed to replenish fishing reserves in our waters, because losses are charged for illegal catching of either unique species or violating the fishing rules. And he damaged our fishery reserves in this case. How could these 45 million hryvnias be returned to the waters? For this purpose, we want to implement an absolutely European model into Ukraine. And as one of the examples, we took a Lithuanian example. The Lithuanian fund for fishery support has been functioning since 1992, and it has proved efficient. These 45 million money paid by our entrepreneurs if they work in waters, if they extract sand, or if they deepen the bottom or build some structures. The system provides that for such activities that can be harmful to the fish in our waters should be compensated. If industrialists catch fish, then they have to pay special amount. There are other sources. All these sources, all these funds have to be generated in one place, in the fund of fishery support. And our draft law follows these principles. We want to have a European model that functions in all EU countries, and it has to work with us. These funds, once they are in the fund of fishery support, have to be distributed among priority goals. If you look at the Lithuanian example, the same model should be implemented in Ukraine. There is a supervisory council consisting of the state, scientific and NGO representatives. And this supervisory board or supervisory council looks at the practice, where the money should go and where we want to direct them. Where we have a large need for financing, scientific research, because otherwise we don't know about the situation in our waters. It's simpler with other resources. If we talk about forestry, then it's quite simple to understand what's happening to the forests. It's not so simple with fish. We need to have systemic scientific research. And for that purpose, we need to hire a boat, a vessel. We need to pay the rent. We need to pay salaries to researchers. These are expenses that are not covered by the state budget. Respectively, figures we get from the scientific research is fairly criticized by everyone engaged in the fishery. Then this money should go from this fund for the purpose of putting fish into waters. It's about 40 million hryvnias this year, and it's financed from the state budget. If this fund works, then the industry itself can generate resources to replenish fish reserves in our waters. And this money would be enough to provide the fishery protection bodies with new material means, like with the large vessels, automobiles, night vision devices, and so on. The funds from this, the money from this fund is planned to go to support enterprises, fish growing enterprises, which have fish babies that are then put into our waters. As a result, to implement the European experience in Ukraine, we should have more fish for the Ukrainian consumers. And our entrepreneurs should have more chances. We are #1 in Europe in amount of water surface suitable for fishery, but we occupy less than 1% in the agricultural and industrial sector. We have very large legislative potential, and we have to work to open this potential. As to the support of fishery, this is all. Then I'll switch to another draft law, touching upon a document that have to support our fish since the moment of its catching. All Europeans know where they can get information about where, when and how fish was caught that they buy in their retail networks. In Ukraine, the system doesn't work. As a result, we have a very large shadowed amount of fishing, and we have a large amount of illegal fishing, and we have questions, and we know about that, about safety of fish consumed by Ukrainians, which is confirmed by the latest events. What do we want to do? We want to implement the model existing in the EU, to have a document that will follow up the fish since the moment of its catching till its final consumption. We are talking about a certificate. This document has to specify a type of species of fish, where it was caught and when it happened. This document, this certificate, has to make it impossible for retail network to sell illegal fish. Now we expect that the amount of illegal fishing that accounts for 60%. For example, last year there was a record on catching illegal fish, which is shown by our statistics. According to our estimations, The annual amount of fish illegally caught accounts for 120 and over 140,000 tons. We expect that this certificate will transfer this amount either into the legal field or to reduce it. So another positive consequence of this system implementation will be that you know that in the world, literally last week I read that the largest enterprises catching fish united to combat illegal fishing. Why? Because illegal fishing influences these enterprises' economic situation. Because it's clear that official entrepreneurs find it difficult to compete with illegal fishers who don't pay taxes, who work in the gray zone. If we reduce the amount of the illegally caught fish, we will encourage all the entrepreneurs who work legally, who pay taxes, and who create jobs. What is important? The system that we want to implement on the certificate of origin doesn't provide for getting a paper document. We want to create a system that would be modern, that doesn't exist yet in any of the EU countries. And we want to make a maximal digital system of issuing fish origin documents. Using smartphones or using computers or using ordinary telephones could be enough to declare about amounts of fish caught that was done, and also to enable us to verify the amount of fish caught by a specific user, and to enable other bodies and consumers to get information about the origin of specific fish. I would like it that every consumer buying fish in a store to have an opportunity to get all information about the fish origin. Of course, it's a rather complicated procedure that would require much clarification work and development of a large e-system. But we are starting this work, and these legislative initiatives were developed by our colleagues, and it's the first step to begin work toward this purpose. I'd like us to start launching this system in Ukraine to complete this process in several years. As to the last draft law, it's about some subsidies to our enterprises of agricultures, those enterprises that grow fish. Unfortunately, the draft law that was adopted at the end of last year and was put into operation since the beginning of this year, providing for subsidies to very many entrepreneurs. It excluded us from the list of enterprises eligible for subsidies. It resulted in the complication of the situation for our enterprises, because enterprises who grow fish come across many problems, starting with energy prices and feed prices. I believe that if our enterprises who are dealing with agriculture, who we support at least a little bit, they give a result expected. We talk about that we are launching a draft law providing for the 800 million that were directed to the subsidies of our agricultural workers, producers, will also be used by our aquaculture enterprises. Three important draft laws we have that are aimed at increasing the amount of fish in our waters the amount of fish at our stores, to reduce illegal fishing, to make our market and our fishery more European. In conclusion, I'd like to thank the experts engaged in this work. Once again, I'd like to ask for support of everyone who will engage into the adopting of these draft laws, and I hope that next time when we meet, we'll discuss the adopted draft laws. Mr. Yehor Luchynkin, the author of the draft law as to the fund of fishery support, and Mr. Konstantyn Demianenko, the author of the project on fish origin certificate and
Agrarian country, Lena Gribova, good afternoon. First question. And what money do you need? The amount that is lacking. And the topic about the cases of consumption, and what about this document implementation if we have this cases this year? Good example I've mentioned, to provide proper vessels, to provide proper protection, vehicles. Minimum additional means that are needed to fight illegal fishing. Last year we needed 140 million, and the optimal amount would be 2 million, and to provide for it better we would need 400 million. So we got only 40. And I'm sure when this fund starts its operation in 3 or 5 years, we will be able to finance all our needs and to provide necessary means and to complete this process without additional financing from the general fund of the budget, using only those resources that are available in fishing industry. Concerning your question about security and safety of products, this is the competence of the state consumption safety of products service. So we know and we are convinced that the poacher is not a person who is interested in quality. They do not bring this food in appropriate conditions. The fish, it should be in the ice while transporting. So they are not interested in proper safety of the products that should be envisaged, and the introduction of the certificate of origin will provide the opportunity to see that this is legal fish that comes from the legal producer. And there is, you should understand where this point is placed, because poachers, they like to unload fish in points that are not known to us. So we should understand where this fish comes from, and today no one knows whether the fish that is sold in supermarkets, whether it is really legal. because sometimes it is provided by people who are not the stakeholders in the industry, and we don't. So this document does not directly relate to safety of products. This is about fighting illegal fishery, and also it will contribute to safety of food products. Konstantyn Simonenko. I would like to ask about the percentage of poaching in Europe, because I understand that Europeans got united in fighting poaching, and also who is fined for illegal fishing, or whether these are just lay citizens or these are industrial enterprises. And I would like to ask about fines. If I understood correctly, 45 million for half year of 2017, and last year I didn't get the figure. I thought 230, maybe 30. Yes, 30. These are not fines. This is loss. And we have fines, we have losses, compensation is accrued. So this is only one component out of the fines that can be imposed on the violators. And in Lithuanian Foundation, there will be in Lithuanian fund, some measures are envisaged to fight this. So I would like my colleague to answer this question concerning the fines. We have already discussed this, and I want you to repeat your second question. The information that we get of records that is on the internet, we know that Europeans decided that 25%, if it is from poachers, this is an acceptable form, because they cannot reduce this amount, and poachers fishing, what is this poaching? In Europe, there is different terminology. This is illegal or unaccountable fishing. So, poacher can be just a common citizen who just fish without any certificate, or it can be an entrepreneur who fishes more than it is allowed. For example, he can get to 1 ton or 10 tons, but he gets 2 times more. So, and this different constitute his violation. So, poachers are all those people who violate the rules. So there is an opinion that the biggest harm is done by industrial enterprises who excessively fish. And maybe Konstantyn would add on this, because they carry out a survey in this for a long time. So anyone can violate these rules. That's why if a person violates the rule, they should be punished. So these are, it's not only about enterprises or citizens, these are all categories who try to fish, and if the means that they use are illegal, or if they do this in the wrong way, so they are the violators, the poachers. And please tell us about the scope of your experience. So we worked on this draft law, and also I am a deputy director on scientific work of Institute of Fishery and Ecology of the Sea. And during many years, We established the limits on the use of sea resources. We should understand, we shouldn't allow excessive fishing, and we should know about it. And I worked with the region of the Azov Sea, and the illegal fishing exceeds the legal fishing many times, and we lost some types of fish. Sturgeon, we lost this population, and also I would like to say in what way foreign Western companies can fight with illegal fishing, and the European Union, when they fish in different types of water bodies, everything is okay, because European means of monitoring, they are well developed, and now we try to move along the same way that was demonstrated by the leading Western nations. But also there is fishing in the in open sea, where there is really difficult to influence the activity of non-organized fishers, and to inform about the activity these companies in the ocean, to impose sanctions against the companies and countries that are violators. So this is the instrument for the Western companies, big companies, how to fight this. So please specify, and I can deliberate on these issues. Yehor, I would like to ask you about whether they included in this draft law the experience of the Lithuania about the confiscation of fish from illegal fishers, and confiscation of means, and maybe they won't sell these nets or other illegal means of fishing, but administrative code envisages confiscation of vessels from violators that did harm to bioresources and water resources. And these vessels, they will be sold, and the money will be directed to this fund of support of fishery. And could you please please specify about the sources that will be that will contribute to this fund? So we envisaged potential sources for this fund. I would like to say that this fund is a special fund in the framework of all budget, state budget, and our fund is divided in special and general fund, and so the money it stays within the budget, the state budget, and these are administrative fines for violating the rules of fishery, and compensation money for the for the actions that harm bioresources. Also, we would like to direct to this fund the money for 3rd and 16th group from import of fish and seafood, according to the law of Ukraine on customs duty. And also there can be money from international organizations. We shouldn't forget that in Europe there exists a European Fund of Maritime and Fishery, and they have 6 billion euro, and they distribute this money among the EU participants to support fishery. So maybe we will be able to take part in the work of this fund. But we should say that European countries will be able to provide money that will be directed exclusively to fishery, and they won't be dispersed to other needs of the state, and they will be directed exclusively to cover the needs of fishing industry. And according to the budget code, the money of these special funds, they are directed only for the purposes that are in the scope of activity of these funds. So there was such a paragraph that one of the sources can be charity of private persons, organizations. Do I understand correctly? Yes, we envisaged this. State budget of Ukraine consists of money that come from the citizens. These are in the form of taxes or charity. So the special fund, why I specify this? Because activists ask us, and people say we want to help, and there's no mechanism how we can allocate money from our budget. So there is no such mechanism. So this can be seen as corruption. So we cannot accept this help now. So this fund also will allow to activists who ask how they can contribute. They can legally and transparently do this, and then they can see transparent and open report how this money was spent. And what sum do you plan to accumulate in the fund? According to our preliminary estimate, I understand that this draft law was not coordinated by the Ministry of Finance yet, so maybe they will limit some sources. And as of today, according to our estimates, this can be about 500 million hryvnias. So this is our estimates, because we do not know what losses will be made to bioresources, what will be the money for compensation. So we just estimated the sums of 3 last years. So we established that this should be the sum about 500 million hryvnia. And as of today, which maybe for the whole fishing industry, 146 million is allocated, and the deficit is about 340 million. So we get minimum that the state fishing agency asks our deputies to allocate, then they adopt the state budget for the next year for the fishing industry. So each industry provides their wishes, and then after the state budget is adopted, they get what is envisaged by the law of Ukraine on the state budget for the year, and the sums that will be provided. Thank you for this answer, Olena. This number is approximate if you need more definite figures. So it is really inconvenient that someone loses 1 or 2 million out of state budget. If you have any other questions, please ask. If there are no more questions, thank you very much. If you have questions, you can put them off record, so the materials will be sent to you to your email addresses. Thank you.